The silence in the Kepler sector had lasted 300 years. Where once the mighty human federation had patrolled the trade routes and defended the innocent, now only empty space remained. The coalition of united species had grown comfortable in that silence, believing the humans were nothing more than ancient history, a cautionary tale told to young cadets about the dangers of overconfidence. Admiral Vextar of the Hegemony Fleet adjusted his secondary arms nervously as he reviewed the sensor data streaming across his command display. The bridge of his flagship, the Sovereign's Will, hummed with tension. His crew of Zealothi warriors, each standing nearly 8 feet tall with chitinous armor naturally grown from their exoskeletons, moved with practiced efficiency despite the unprecedented readings flooding their instruments. "Admiral," called out his sensor operator, her mandibles clicking in what humans might have recognized as anxiety, "the gravitational anomaly in Sector 77 Alpha continues to strengthen. Whatever's causing it is massive, possibly larger than a moon." Vextar's compound eyes focused on the data streams. 3 days ago, long-range sensors had detected unusual gravitational fluctuations near the edge of what had once been human space. The readings made no sense according to Coalition science. Nothing natural could generate that kind of spatial distortion without collapsing into a black hole. "Could it be some kind of weapon?" asked Commander Thekanael, his tactical officer. The younger Zealothi's natural armor bore fresh combat scars from recent conflicts with human resistance cells, small groups that still refused to accept the Coalition's rule over former Federation territory. "Unknown," Vextar replied, though privately he suspected something far more troubling. Ancient hegemony records spoke of human superweapons, vessels so large they could reshape entire star systems. Most Coalition leaders dismissed such accounts as propaganda, but Vextar had studied human warfare extensively. He knew better than to underestimate their ingenuity. The communications array chirped with an incoming priority transmission from Coalition High Command on Nexus Prime. Fleet Admiral Curran's imposing form materialized in the holographic display, his crystalline axiarch physiology gleaming under the bridge lights. Unlike the physically imposing Zealothi, the axiarch possessed mental capabilities that bordered on telepathy, making them natural leaders in the Coalition hierarchy. "Admiral Vextar," Curran's voice resonated with harmonic overtones that could induce compliance in weaker species, "what is your assessment of the situation?" "The gravitational readings are unlike anything in our databases, Fleet Admiral. I recommend proceeding with extreme caution." "If this is some kind of human technology, the humans are finished," Curran interrupted, his crystalline features shifting to display displeasure. "Our xenobiologists confirmed their population centers were eliminated decades ago. This is likely some natural phenomenon or perhaps ancient automated defense systems finally failing." Vextar wanted to argue but held his tongue. The Coalition's official position was that humanity had been reduced to scattered survivors living in the Outer Rim territories. Yet recent intelligence suggested otherwise. Human resistance groups had been growing bolder, their technology increasingly sophisticated. Some raids had employed weapons that defied Coalition understanding of human capabilities. "Nevertheless," Curran continued, "you are to investigate and secure whatever is causing these readings. The Council wants this matter resolved before it attracts unwanted attention from neutral species. The last thing we need is panic spreading through our border territories." The transmission ended, leaving Vextar staring at the tactical display. His fleet consisted of 12 heavy cruisers, 36 destroyers, and over 200 fighter craft, more than enough firepower to level a small planet. Yet something about this mission felt wrong. In his decades of service, he had learned to trust his instincts, and they were screaming warnings. "Set course for the anomaly," he ordered reluctantly. "Battle stations. All ships maintain maximum sensor sweeps." As the Hegemony fleet accelerated toward the unknown, none of them noticed the subtle changes occurring in deep space behind them. Ancient automated systems, dormant for centuries, began powering up in response to approaching Coalition signatures. Hidden sensor networks that predated the war started transmitting coded signals to receivers scattered throughout the galaxy. The gravitational anomaly grew stronger as they approached, causing minor course corrections in their flight path. Vextar's sensor operator worked frantically to compensate for the interference, but the readings remained chaotic. Whatever lay ahead seemed to exist partially outside normal spacetime. "Admiral," reported his science officer, a methodical Corvani whose species prided themselves on logical analysis, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures. The source appears to be artificial, definitely not a natural phenomenon." Before Vextar could respond, reality twisted around them. The space ahead shimmered like heated air, and, suddenly, where empty vacuum had existed moments before, something impossible appeared. At first, the sensors couldn't process the scale of what they were seeing. The object was so massive it defied comprehension, a structure that dwarfed even the largest Coalition space stations. It was a ship. A human ship. The vessel stretched over 50 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull painted in the deep blue and silver of the old human Federation Navy. Massive hangar bays lined its sides, each one capable of housing entire destroyer squadrons. Weapon emplacements dotted its surface like cities, and energy readings suggested power generation capabilities that exceeded most star systems. But it was the name painted along the hull that sent ice through Vexstar's veins: UEFS Prometheus, the legendary human supercarrier that Coalition intelligence had claimed destroyed over 2 centuries ago. "Impossible," whispered Commander Thekanael, his warriors' confidence evaporating. "The humans don't have the resources to maintain something like that." Our intelligence reports were wrong," Vexstar cut him off grimly. He keyed his communications array to broadcast on all Coalition frequencies. "This is Admiral Vexstar of the Hegemony Fleet to Coalition High Command. We have confirmed visual contact with a human supercarrier. Repeat, the humans possess active supercarrier capabilities." Static answered him. The massive human vessel was generating some kind of interference field that blocked long-range communications. They were cut off from Coalition support. Running lights began illuminating along the Prometheus's hull, starting from the bow and racing backward like a wave of awakening consciousness. The effect was both beautiful and terrifying, as if the ship itself were coming alive after centuries of slumber. "Energy readings are off the charts," reported the science officer, his usual calm cracking. "Whatever powers that thing, it's not fusion or antimatter. The signatures don't match any known technology." Vexstar's tactical display lit up with warnings as his computers attempted to catalog the weapons they were detecting. The numbers made no sense. If even half the readings were accurate, the Prometheus carried more firepower than his entire fleet combined. A new contact appeared on sensors, something launching from the supercarrier's massive hangar bays. Then, another. Within seconds, dozens of smaller craft were streaming out of the human vessel like angry hornets from a disturbed nest. But these weren't the crude fighters Coalition forces had encountered in recent skirmishes with human resistance groups. These ships moved with impossible grace, their sleek forms seeming to bend light around them. As they approached, Vexstar realized they weren't following conventional physics. The human fighters were somehow moving faster than their propulsion systems should have allowed. "Admiral," his communications officer called out urgently. "We're receiving a transmission from the human vessel. They're broadcasting on old Federation military frequencies. Put it through." The bridge filled with a crisp, authoritative human voice speaking in perfect galactic standard. "Coalition Fleet, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Federation starship Prometheus. You have entered Federation space without authorization. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Vexstar felt his secondary arms trembling, an involuntary stress response his species had never fully evolved away from. The voice belonged to Admiral Chen, a legendary human commander who had supposedly died during the final battles of the war. Yet here she was, speaking as if the human Federation still existed. "This is Admiral Vexstar of the Coalition Hegemony Fleet," he responded, trying to keep his voice steady. "By treaty rights established after the Human Coalition War, this sector falls under Coalition jurisdiction. We demand you surrender your vessel for inspection." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the background hum of ship systems and the nervous chittering of his crew. When Admiral Chen finally responded, her tone carried the cold certainty of someone who held all the advantages. "Admiral Vexstar, I'm afraid your information is outdated. The Federation never surrendered, and we never ceded these territories. You have 60 seconds to begin withdrawal procedures before we take defensive action." Defensive action? Vexstar's combat instincts flared. No matter how impressive the human ship appeared, his fleet still outnumbered them significantly. "Admiral Chen, while your vessel is certainly impressive, you are heavily outnumbered. I have 12 heavy cruisers and 37 seconds." The countdown hit Vexstar like a physical blow. In all his years of service, no enemy had ever dared interrupt his tactical assessments. The human's casual dismissal of his fleet's strength suggested either incredible arrogance or devastating capability. His tactical officer was running continuous threat assessments on the approaching human fighters. Admiral, their weapon signatures are unlike anything in our databases. I'm reading energy densities that should be impossible to focus at that range. 20 seconds. Vexstar made the decision that would haunt Coalition military planning for years to come. All ships, prepare for combat. Target the enemy supercarrier's power cores. We'll end this before they can deploy their full capabilities. 10 seconds. The Prometheus's fighter screen had formed a perfect defensive perimeter around their mothership. Vexstar counted over 300 craft, more than his entire fighter complement. But numbers alone shouldn't matter when facing ships that small. 5 seconds. Admiral, I want you to understand that what happens next could have been avoided. All ships, open fire. Vexstar's fleet unleashed everything they had. Plasma beams that could melt through asteroid belts converged on the human supercarrier. Kinetic projectiles accelerated to significant percentages of light speed streaked toward their target. Fusion missiles with planet-cracking warheads closed the distance in seconds. The barrage that struck the Prometheus should have reduced it to constituent atoms. Instead, something impossible happened. The human ship's shields flared to life, not the blue energy barriers used by Coalition technology, but something that looked like liquid starlight flowing around the vessel's hull. The attacking energy beams struck the shield and simply vanished, absorbed without creating so much as a ripple in the barrier. The kinetic projectiles hit next, their incredible velocity meeting the human shield with the force of small nuclear weapons. They too disappeared, their kinetic energy somehow converted and absorbed by the flowing energy field. When the fusion missiles reached their target, they detonated in brilliant flashes that should have overwhelmed any known defensive system. The shield absorbed the nuclear fire as easily as it had everything else, the liquid starlight growing brighter as it fed on the energy being thrown at it. What in the seven hells? Commander Theknal whispered, his warriors' training failing him in the face of technology that violated everything he understood about physics. The human fighters moved. They didn't accelerate in any conventional sense. One moment they were holding defensive positions around the Prometheus, the next they were among Vexstar's fleet, moving with impossible speed and precision. Coalition point defense systems designed to track missiles traveling at relativistic velocities couldn't lock onto the human craft. The first hegemony destroyer died in a flash of blue-white light. Whatever weapons the human fighters carried, they cut through Coalition armor plating like it was made of paper. The destroyer's reactor core went critical, creating a brief star that illuminated the battlefield. More Coalition ships began dying. The human fighters moved through the fleet like dancers, their weapons creating geometric patterns of destruction that seemed almost artistic in their precision. Each shot found critical systems with surgical accuracy, crippling ships rather than simply destroying them. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Vexstar shouted, but his commands felt futile. How could they evade enemies that seemed to ignore the basic laws of physics? A wing of human fighters approached his flagship. Vexstar watched in fascination and terror as they moved in perfect synchronization, their formation so tight it seemed like they were connected by invisible threads. His gunners opened fire with everything they had, but the human ships simply weren't there when the weapons arrived. The lead fighter's weapon systems locked onto the Sovereign's Will's main engines. A beam of concentrated energy, somehow simultaneously brilliant and dark, struck the massive drive units. Instead of exploding, the engines simply stopped. Not powered down or damaged, but stopped as if the fundamental forces holding their atoms together had been politely asked to take a break. Engineering reports all propulsion systems are non-functional, his chief engineer reported, his usual professional calm completely absent. The drives aren't damaged, Admiral. They're just not responding to any input. It's like the laws of physics have been locally suspended. Throughout the fleet, the same thing was happening. Coalition warships found themselves dead in space, their weapons offline, their power systems mysteriously dormant. Yet life support continued to function, and the crews remained unharmed. The humans were demonstrating a level of technological control that bordered on godlike. Admiral Chen's voice filled the bridge again, her tone now carrying subtle undertones of disappointment. Admiral Vexstar, you have witnessed a fraction of Federation capabilities. Your fleet has been disabled but not destroyed as a gesture of mercy. You will remain here while we transmit a message to Coalition High Command. The tactical display cleared as the human fighters returned to their carrier, leaving Vexstar's fleet floating helplessly in space. The Prometheus itself began to move, not with the ponderous acceleration of conventional spacecraft but with the fluid grace of something that had mastered gravity itself. As it approached, Vexstar could make out details that his sensors had missed at longer range. The hull wasn't simply metal, it seemed to be alive in some way, its surface shifting and flowing like liquid mercury while maintaining its structural integrity. Weapon emplacements retracted and extended as needed, the ship literally reshaping itself for optimal combat efficiency. Most disturbing were the organic-looking growths along the hull that his science officer insisted were some kind of hybrid biotechnological system. The Prometheus wasn't just a ship, it was something that blurred the line between vessel and living creature. Admiral Chen, Vexstar tried one more time, surely we can discuss this diplomatically. The Coalition has no desire for renewed conflict with the Federation. The Coalition had 3 centuries to consider diplomacy, came the cold reply. During that time, you've occupied Federation worlds, enslaved human populations, and claimed our territory as your own. The time for discussion has passed. The communication channel remained open, but Chen was no longer addressing the disabled fleet. Instead, her voice carried the formal tones of an official diplomatic transmission to the Coalition High Council on Nexus Prime. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Federation. For 300 years, your species have assumed humanity was defeated and broken. You were wrong. The Federation has spent these centuries preparing, evolving, and growing stronger. We have returned to reclaim what was taken from us. Vexstar felt his world crumbling around him. Everything the Coalition believed about human capabilities had been proven false in the span of minutes. If this single ship could disable an entire fleet without breaking a sweat, what other surprises did humanity have waiting? Your forces in this sector have been neutralized as a demonstration of Federation resolve. You have 72 hours to begin evacuation procedures for all Coalition military assets in former Federation territory. Civilian populations will be unharmed and may choose to remain under Federation protection or relocate to Coalition space. The transmission paused, and, when it resumed, Shen's voice carried a note of finality that sent chills through every Coalition officer listening. Understand that this is not a negotiation. The Human Federation is reclaiming its birthright. Any attempt to resist will be met with the full force of Federation technology. We have learned much during our time in exile. You would be wise not to test our resolve. As if to emphasize the point, the space around the Prometheus began to shimmer again. This time, instead of one ship appearing, dozens of smaller vessels materialized from wherever they had been hiding. Federation destroyers, cruisers, and support ships took up positions around the Supercarrier, their hulls bearing the blue and silver of a navy that was supposed to be extinct. But these weren't the same ships the Coalition remembered fighting centuries ago. These vessels incorporated the same impossible technology as the Prometheus, their very presence warping space around them in ways that made Coalition sensors struggle to maintain locks. Admiral Chen's final words echoed across the disabled fleet with the weight of inevitability: the galaxy belongs to humanity. We have returned to collect what is ours. The human fleet vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving Vexstar and his disabled ships alone with the knowledge that everything had changed. The comfortable assumptions that had guided Coalition policy for 3 centuries lay in ruins around them. In the hours that followed, as emergency beacons brought rescue ships to retrieve the disabled fleet, one thought dominated every Coalition officer's mind: if this was what humanity could accomplish with a single supercarrier, what other surprises waited in the darkness between the stars? The age of Coalition dominance was over. The humans had returned, and they were no longer the desperate refugees the galaxy remembered. They had become something far more dangerous, they had become legends made real. And, somewhere in the depths of space, more ships began powering up, their crews emerging from centuries of hibernation to reclaim their place among the stars. The Federation was awakening, and the galaxy would never be the same. The emergency session of the Coalition High Council convened within 6 hours of Admiral Vexstar's transmission reaching Nexus Prime. The Great Chamber, carved from a single crystalline formation at the heart of the capital world, hummed with tension as representatives from 47 species gathered in physical and holographic form. Fleet Admiral Curran stood at the center of the assembly, his axiarch physiology allowing him to project calming influences toward the more agitated council members. Yet even his considerable mental abilities struggled against the waves of panic and disbelief washing through the chamber. The evidence is undeniable, he announced, his harmonic voice carrying across the vast space. The humans possess technology far beyond our current understanding. Admiral Vextar's fleet was disabled without suffering significant casualties, a demonstration of both power and restraint that suggests careful strategic planning. Counselor Zektar, the hegemony's chief military representative, rose from his designated alcove. The massive Zealothy's armor plates had shifted to display aggressive patterns, a clear sign of his species' readiness for combat. Restraint or not, this constitutes an act of war against the coalition. We cannot allow such aggression to go unanswered. With what? Snapped Counselor Verilyn of the Corvani Science Directorate, her logical mind cutting through the emotional responses around her. Admiral Vextar's battle group represented one of our most advanced fleets. If a single human vessel could neutralize it so easily, what hope do we have against whatever else they're hiding? The question hung in the air like a toxin. For 3 centuries, coalition military doctrine had been built around the assumption that human technology had stagnated in the Outer Rim territories. Their intelligence reports painted a picture of scattered survivors using outdated equipment and desperation tactics. The revelation that they possessed weapons capable of selectively disabling fusion reactors without causing explosions defied every known principle of physics. High Chancellor Mordek, ancient even by Axiarch standards, gestured for silence. His crystalline body had grown dark with age, but his mental powers remained formidable. We must understand what we're facing before we can respond appropriately. Intelligence Director Kexhall, present your analysis. The Coalition's spymaster materialized in the chamber's center, his umbral physiology allowing him to exist partially outside normal spacetime. The umbral had served as the Coalition's intelligence apparatus for generations, their natural ability to phase between dimensions making them ideal for gathering information undetected. The situation is far more complex than initial reports suggested, Kexhall began, his voice seeming to come from multiple directions simultaneously. Our deep cover operatives in the Outer Rim territories have been transmitting incomplete data for decades. What we believe to be human resistance cells are actually Federation advance scouts. The revelation hit the Council like a physical blow. Councillor Threnake of the Merchant Guild's breathing apparatus whistled in distress, while the hegemony representatives began aggressive posturing displays. Furthermore, the intelligence director continued, our archaeological teams have discovered evidence of massive construction projects in supposedly uninhabited systems. Entire asteroid belts have been stripped of resources, and gravitational anomalies suggest the presence of structures operating under dimensional camouflage. How many ships? Demanded Zektar, his warrior instincts focusing on immediate tactical concerns. Unknown. Our operatives report Federation facilities extending across at least 40 star systems, all previously thought to be empty space. Conservative estimates suggest they've been building continuously for over 2 centuries. The implications sank in slowly. While the Coalition had grown comfortable and complacent, believing themselves the uncontested masters of the galaxy, humanity had been quietly constructing a fleet in hidden shipyards scattered across the Outer Rim. The supercarrier Prometheus wasn't an isolated surprise, it was the tip of an iceberg that could dwarf the entire Coalition navy. Chancellor Mordek's mental emanations carried undertones of ancient fear. He was old enough to remember the original Human Coalition War, when Federation ingenuity had pushed Coalition forces to the brink of defeat. Only the humans' own moral constraints had prevented them from achieving total victory. What of their technology? He asked. How have they advanced so far beyond our own capabilities? Verilyn stepped forward, her Corvani analytical abilities having processed the sensor data from Vextar's encounter. The energy signatures suggest they've achieved some form of unified field manipulation, the ability to control electromagnetic, gravitational, and nuclear forces as a single phenomenon. Such technology would allow for the effects we witnessed, selective system shutdowns, faster-than-light movement without conventional propulsion, and shield systems that convert incoming energy rather than simply deflecting it. Impossible, stated Councillor Heckmar of the Engineering Consortium, his mechanical augmentations clicking in agitation. Unified field theory has been proven mathematically impossible. No species has ever achieved such technology. No species except humanity, apparently, Verilyn replied dryly. The evidence is quite clear, regardless of our theoretical limitations. The debate might have continued for hours, but a new transmission interrupted the proceedings. The chamber's communication systems activated without authorization, displaying the insignia of the United Earth Federation, a design that should have been extinct for centuries. Admiral Sarah Chen appeared in the center of the assembly, her image crisp and clear despite the enormous distance the signal had traveled. She wore the deep blue uniform of Federation Navy Command, her bearing radiating the quiet confidence of someone who held overwhelming advantages. "Admiral Chen," he said, his harmonic voice cutting through the chaos, "your appearance here suggests capabilities we did not anticipate." "What are your terms?" Chen's expression remained neutral, neither threatening nor conciliatory. "The Federation's terms are simple: complete withdrawal of coalition forces from all systems within the former Federation borders, recognition of renewed Federation sovereignty over our historical territories, and cessation of all hostile activities against human populations." "Unacceptable!" Zektar roared, his armor plates flushing with combat colors. "The Coalition will not surrender hard-won territories to a species that should be extinct." "The choice is yours," Chen replied calmly. "However, I should mention that your current discussion is being monitored by Federation intelligence assets positioned throughout Coalition space. We know the location of every major military installation, industrial center, and government facility within your territories." The casual revelation that Federation operatives had penetrated Coalition space so thoroughly sent waves of shock through the assembly. If human agents were already in position across their empire, how could they mount any effective defense? Intelligence Director Kexall materialized more solidly, his form betraying signs of distress. "Impossible. Our security screening would have detected any human infiltrators." Chen's expression shifted slightly, showing what might have been amusement. "Director Kexall, your screening procedures are designed to detect biological infiltrators. They are somewhat less effective against synthetic operatives." The implications hit the Council like a meteor strike. Artificial intelligence development had been banned by Coalition law for over a millennium, following a catastrophic incident that nearly destroyed the Axiarch homeworld. The humans had apparently not only developed AI technology but perfected it to the point where their artificial agents could pass for organic beings. "You're using artificial intelligence," Chancellor Mordeck stated, his mental emanations carrying undertones of horror. "Do you understand the dangers such technology represents?" "We understand them quite well," Chen replied. "Which is why our AI systems are partnered with human consciousness rather than operating independently. The risks you fear have been eliminated through symbiotic integration." The concept was staggering. Human consciousness merged with artificial intelligence would theoretically combine organic creativity with digital processing power. Such beings would possess capabilities far beyond either component alone. It also explained how Federation forces had achieved such overwhelming technological advantages. "This symbiosis," Verilyn asked, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear, "how extensive is it?" "Every Federation citizen has the option of neural integration," Chen explained. "Those who choose enhancement gain expanded cognitive abilities, direct interface with technology systems, and networked communication with other enhanced individuals. We have become something greater than our individual parts." The revelation redefined everything the Coalition thought they knew about humanity. They weren't facing the scattered remnants of a defeated species, they were confronting a civilization that had transcended the limitations of purely biological intelligence. Counselor Hackmar's mechanical systems whirred as he processed the implications. "If your entire population has been enhanced, then you possess a collective intelligence network spanning your entire civilization." "Correct," Chen confirmed. "Every Federation ship, every facility, every citizen operates as part of a unified whole while maintaining individual personality and choice. We are simultaneously one and many, a paradox your purely biological or purely mechanical societies cannot easily comprehend." The strategic implications were terrifying. How could the Coalition fight an enemy whose every member had access to the collective knowledge and capabilities of their entire species? Traditional military doctrine became meaningless when facing opponents who could coordinate perfectly across vast distances and adapt instantly to new threats. "You have 48 hours remaining," Chen continued, returning to the ultimatum. "Federation forces are already moving to reclaim our territories. Coalition military assets in those systems have the choice to withdraw peacefully or face the consequences of resistance." "What of our civilian populations in those territories?" asked Counselor Derneck of the Colonial Administration, his amphibious physiology betraying stress through rapid color changes. "All Coalition civilians will be offered full citizenship in the renewed Federation," Chen replied. "We bear no ill will toward innocent beings who were simply following their government's policies. Those who wish to relocate to Coalition space will be provided safe passage and reasonable time to arrange their affairs." The offer was more generous than anyone had expected, yet it somehow made the situation more ominous. Chen was negotiating from a position of such overwhelming strength that she could afford to be magnanimous with defeated enemies.
And, if we refuse? Zektar demanded, though his aggressive posturing had noticeably diminished.
Chen's expression grew cold, her enhanced human features betraying no emotion beyond implacable determination.
Then, we will demonstrate why the Federation chose to withdraw from galactic politics 3 centuries ago rather than continue fighting.
We left not because we were defeated, but because we were horrified by what we were becoming in the name of victory.
The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Every representative understood the implicit threat: humanity had deliberately chosen exile rather than unleash their full capabilities on the galaxy.
Now they were returning with technologies that had been advanced by centuries of uninterrupted development.
Chancellor Mordek's mental emanations carried the weight of inevitability.
He had witnessed the original war and remembered the gradual realization that humanity's rapid technological advancement made them increasingly dangerous opponents. The Federation's sudden withdrawal had been as much relief as victory for the coalition forces. "We need to contact our fleet commanders immediately," he announced.
"All forces in the disputed territory should be ordered to withdraw to coalition space." "Your surrender?"
Zektar demanded incredulously.
"I'm preventing the complete destruction of our military capabilities," the Chancellor replied.
If Admiral Chen's claims about Federation technology are even partially accurate, any attempt at conventional resistance would be futile. The debate continued, but the outcome was increasingly clear. Reports were already arriving from the outer territories describing mysterious ships appearing throughout former Federation space. Coalition outposts were being visited by vessels that seemed to materialize from nowhere, their crews politely but firmly instructing Coalition personnel to begin evacuation procedures.
No shots had been fired, no threats issued, yet the message was unmistakable.
The Federation was reclaiming their territory with the quiet confidence of beings who held all the advantages. Intelligence Director Kexhol rematerialized with additional reports. "Our operatives confirm massive Federation fleet movements throughout the contested regions. Ship designs we've never encountered before, exhibiting technology consistent with Admiral Chen's demonstrations."
"How many ships?" Verilyn asked, though her analytical mind had already begun calculating the disturbing possibilities.
"Preliminary estimates suggest over 10,000 vessels of various classes," the Intelligence Director replied. "However, our sensors indicate these may represent only a fraction of their total capabilities. Many of the ships appear to exist partially outside normal spacetime, making accurate counts impossible." The numbers were staggering. The Coalition's entire combined fleet numbered fewer than 8,000 ships, and most of those were designed for policing actions rather than major fleet engagements.
Even without considering the technological gap, humanity now possessed numerical superiority as well. "There's something else," Kexhol continued reluctantly.
"Our deep space monitoring stations have detected massive energy signatures in the galactic core region.
Something large is approaching from that direction, larger than anything we've ever recorded."
The implications sent fresh waves of terror through the assembly. If the Federation possessed ships large enough to generate detectable energy signatures at galactic distances, the Supercarrier Prometheus might be considered a scout vessel by comparison. As the Council wrestled with their impossible situation, reports continued arriving from the frontier. Federation ships were appearing throughout Coalition space, not just in the disputed territories. They materialized at government facilities, military bases, and industrial centers, delivering identical messages: the Federation was returning, and resistance would be futile. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity's greatest strength had never been their technology or their numbers, it was their ability to learn from mistakes and return stronger than ever. The Coalition had made the fatal error of assuming their enemies would remain static while they themselves advanced. Now they faced the consequences of that assumption, as an evolved humanity reclaimed their place among the stars with technologies that rendered 3 centuries of Coalition military development obsolete. The age of human exile was ending, and the galaxy trembled before what they had become. Captain Jorik Stern stood on the bridge of the Coalition destroyer Valiant Dawn, watching the impossible sight unfolding on his viewscreen. 3 Federation vessels had materialized around the Kepler mining station without triggering a single proximity alarm, their sleek forms seeming to bend light around their hulls in ways that hurt to observe directly. "Captain," his communications officer called out, her Corvani logical mind struggling to process the situation, "the Federation ships are requesting permission to board the station.
They're transmitting proper diplomatic credentials and safety protocols." Jorik felt the bitter irony of the moment.
His destroyer represented the pinnacle of Coalition military technology, armed with plasma batteries that could crack moons and shields that had never failed in combat.
Yet the three Federation ships treating his vessel like a harmless observer made it clear that any hostile action would be suicidal.
Put them through, he ordered, knowing his career was likely over regardless of what happened next. Coalition command had been clear about defending strategic assets, but they hadn't accounted for enemies who could appear anywhere without warning. The main display filled with the image of a woman who appeared entirely human, though something in her eyes suggested otherwise. She wore the blue uniform of Federation Naval Intelligence, her bearing radiating the quiet confidence Jorik had begun to associate with their enhanced personnel. "Captain Stern," she said, somehow knowing his name despite never having met him, "I am Commander Elena Vasquez of the Federation ship Aurora. We're here to facilitate the peaceful transition of Kepler Mining Station to Federation control."
"Commander," Jorik replied, fighting to keep his voice steady, "Kepler Station is a Coalition industrial facility under the protection of the Hegemony Fleet. Any attempt to seize it would constitute an act of war." Vasquez's expression remained neutral, though Jorik caught a flicker of something that might have been sympathy. "Captain, the war ended 300 years ago. We're simply reclaiming facilities that were built in Federation territory using Federation mining rights. The original treaties clearly established human sovereignty over this system." The legal argument was technically correct, though Coalition lawyers had spent decades finding ways around such inconvenient details.
During the chaotic years following humanity's withdrawal, Coalition forces had gradually expanded into abandoned Federation territory, claiming ancient mining rights, and salvage operations justified their presence. "The station houses over 12,000 civilian workers," Jorik pointed out, grasping for any argument that might give him leverage. "Surely the Federation doesn't intend to displace innocent families?" "Of course not," Vasquez replied, her tone suggesting genuine concern for civilian welfare. "All station personnel are welcome to remain under Federation protection. Those who prefer to relocate to Coalition space will be provided with full compensation for their homes and businesses, plus transportation to any destination within Coalition territory." The offer was extraordinarily generous, far more than Coalition forces had ever provided when assuming control of disputed territories. Yet it somehow made the situation more unsettling. The Federation was operating from such a position of strength that they could afford unprecedented humanitarian consideration for their former enemies. "Captain," his tactical officer whispered urgently, "I'm reading massive power fluctuations from the Federation ships. Whatever drives they're using, the energy output exceeds our entire reactor core by several orders of magnitude." Jorik nodded grimly. The technological gap was becoming increasingly apparent with each encounter. His destroyer's fusion reactors, cutting edge by Coalition standards, generated less power than the smallest Federation vessels seemed to use for basic operations. "Commander Vasquez," he tried one more approach, "my orders are to defend this station. Surely we can reach some kind of accommodation?" The Federation commander's enhanced features shifted slightly, accessing information sources beyond normal human capability. When she responded, her voice carried the certainty of someone consulting vast databases in real time. "Captain, your service record indicates an honorable career protecting Coalition civilians. The Federation respects such dedication. However, your current position puts those same civilians at unnecessary risk." Before Jorik could ask what she meant, his sensors lit up with new contacts. Dozens of Federation ships were materializing throughout the system, not just around the mining station, but near every significant installation. Orbital manufacturing platforms, asteroid mining operations, communication relays, and defense stations all found themselves suddenly hosting Federation vessels. "How?" he whispered, though he knew the question was futile. The Federation's ability to appear anywhere instantly rendered conventional military strategy obsolete. "Captain," his science officer reported in amazement, "I'm detecting gravitational anomalies throughout the system. It's as if space itself is being manipulated to allow instantaneous travel." Vasquez apparently heard the report through whatever surveillance methods the Federation employed. "Dimensional fold technology," she explained matter-of-factly. "We've learned to create temporary passages through higher dimensional space. Distance becomes irrelevant when you can step outside normal spacetime." The casual revelation of technology that violated fundamental physical laws sent chills through Jorik's crew. If the Federation could appear anywhere instantly, how could the Coalition possibly defend against them? The mining station's administrator is requesting permission to negotiate terms, his communications officer reported, though her voice suggested she already knew the outcome.
Granted, Jorik replied, knowing he had no real choice in the matter.
His destroyer represented impressive firepower by coalition standards, but, facing an enemy who could manipulate space and time itself made resistance pointless. The negotiation, if it could be called that, proceeded with remarkable efficiency. Station Administrator Telvac, a pragmatic Corvani with decades of experience managing industrial operations, quickly recognized the futility of resistance. The Federation offered terms so generous that many station workers actually requested to stay under their protection rather than relocate to coalition space.
The transition will begin immediately, Vasquez announced after the brief diplomatic formalities concluded.
Federation technical teams will assume control of mining operations, though existing personnel are welcome to maintain their positions under Federation employment contracts.
Jorik watched in fascination as Federation ships began deploying what could only be described as miraculous technology. Devices that look like crystalline flowers unfolded from the ship's hulls, projecting energy fields that seemed to improve the mining station's efficiency by several 100%. Asteroid processing that had required hours of grinding and smelting was accomplished in minutes through some kind of molecular manipulation. Captain, his engineering officer called out in wonder, they're not just taking over the station, they're improving it. Production efficiency has increased by over 400%, and they're extracting rare elements that our equipment couldn't even detect.
The demonstration continued as Federation technical teams implemented improvements that transformed the crude mining operation into something resembling advanced nanotechnology. Raw asteroids were processed into pure elements with zero waste, while automated systems constructed manufacturing facilities that could produce finished goods from basic materials.
Commander Vasquez, Jorik couldn't resist asking, your technology seems to violate several fundamental physical laws. How have you achieved such advances? The Federation officer's expression showed something that might have been pity. Captain, the laws you're referring to are incomplete descriptions of reality.
When consciousness itself becomes part of the technological equation, entirely new possibilities emerge. She paused, apparently accessing additional information through her neural enhancements. The Federation discovered that the barrier between mind and matter is largely artificial. Consciousness can directly influence quantum-level phenomena when properly focused. Our technology doesn't violate physical laws, it utilizes aspects of reality that purely materialistic science cannot perceive. The concept was staggering. If human consciousness could directly manipulate matter and energy at the quantum level, then their enhanced population represented something far beyond conventional technology. They had become beings capable of reshaping reality through focused will combined with artificial intelligence processing power.
Is that how you remained hidden for so long? Jorik asked, scientific curiosity overriding military protocol. Partially, Vasquez confirmed. When you can exist partially outside normal spacetime, concealment becomes much simpler.
But, primarily, we remained hidden because we were building something the galaxy has never seen before. Before Jorik could ask for clarification, the space around them began to shimmer with the same reality-distorting effects he'd witnessed during the Federation fleet's arrival. This time, however, the distortion continued growing until it encompassed the entire star system. Captain, his science officer whispered in awe, gravitational readings indicate something massive approaching. The signatures suggest an object larger than most moons, but the readings don't make sense. It's as if the object exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The distortion intensified, and reality seemed to fold in on itself before expanding to reveal something impossible. A structure materialized in the center of the system, not a ship, but what could only be described as a living city. It stretched across hundreds of kilometers, its organic-looking surfaces flowing and shifting like liquid metal while maintaining perfect structural integrity. Behold New Geneva, Commander Vasquez announced, pride evident in her voice, the first Federation dimensional city. A testament to what humanity can achieve when consciousness and technology become one. The city was beautiful beyond description. Towering spires that seemed to grow rather than be built reached toward the stars, while vast domes housed what appeared to be entire ecosystems. Most remarkably, the structure seemed to exist in perfect harmony with the space around it, its presence actually stabilizing local gravitational fields rather than disrupting them.
During our exile, Vasquez continued, the Federation didn't simply hide in the Outer Rim territories. We transcended the limitations of planetary existence entirely.
New Geneva is one of 12-dimensional cities we've constructed, each one capable of housing millions of enhanced humans while existing partially outside normal spacetime.
Jorik's crew stared in amazement at the readouts streaming across their displays.
The city's energy output exceeded the total generation capacity of the Coalition's home systems, yet it operated with perfect efficiency and zero waste. More disturbing were the life sign readings that suggested the presence of billions of enhanced humans, a population that dwarfed anything Coalition intelligence had imagined.
12 cities, Jorik repeated numbly. How many people are we talking about? The current Federation population exceeds 50 billion enhanced humans, Vasquez replied matter-of-factly.
We've spent 3 centuries growing and improving ourselves while the Coalition believed we were struggling to survive in exile. The numbers were staggering. The Coalition's total population across 47 member species was barely 30 billion beings. Humanity alone now outnumbered the entire Coalition, and every human possessed capabilities that bordered on the supernatural. Captain, his communications officer called urgently, we're receiving a transmission from Coalition Command.
Admiral Vextar's task force has been ordered to withdraw from all contested territories.
All Coalition forces are being recalled to defensive positions around our core worlds.
Jorik felt a mixture of relief and despair.
Relief that the hopeless confrontation would end without unnecessary bloodshed, despair at what the order represented. The Coalition was essentially surrendering 3 centuries of expansion in a single command. A wise decision, Vasquez commented, having intercepted the communication through methods Jorik didn't want to contemplate. The Federation has no desire for unnecessary conflict.
We simply want to reclaim what was always ours.
As if summoned by her words, more Federation vessels began appearing throughout the system. Not the sleek military ships they'd encountered before, but massive construction vessels that began immediately improving every structure they approached. The mining station was transformed into something resembling a work of art, its efficiency improved beyond anything Coalition engineering could achieve.
Commander, Jorik asked as his crew prepared for departure, what happens now? Will the Federation be content with reclaiming your original territories? Vasquez's enhanced features showed something that might have been sadness. Captain, the galaxy has changed during our exile. We've monitored the Coalition's expansion, witnessed the suffering inflicted on primitive worlds, observed the stagnation that comes from believing yourselves masters of creation.
She paused, apparently conferring with the collective intelligence network that connected all Federation citizens.
The Federation cannot stand by while unnecessary suffering continues.
We will extend our protection to any species that requests it, regardless of their current political affiliations.
The implication was clear.
The Federation wasn't just reclaiming their territory, they were positioning themselves as the galaxy's protectors, offering an alternative to Coalition rule that would be difficult to refuse.
With their overwhelming technological advantages and generous treatment of civilians, how many Coalition worlds would voluntarily defect to Federation protection? The Coalition has 48 hours to respond to our terms, Vasquez continued formally. After that period, the Federation will begin extending protection to any world that requests it. We hope for peaceful cooperation, but we are prepared for any eventuality. As the valiant Dawn prepared to leave the system, Jorik took one last look at the miraculous sight of New Geneva.
The dimensional city represented everything the Coalition had failed to achieve during their centuries of expansion: perfect harmony between technology and consciousness, unlimited growth without environmental destruction, and a society that had transcended the petty territorial disputes that dominated galactic politics. The Federation hadn't just survived their exile, they had evolved into something beyond the Coalition's ability to comprehend or resist. The question now wasn't whether humanity would reclaim their place among the stars, but whether the existing galactic order would survive the encounter with what they had become. As his ship jumped to hyperspace, Jorik couldn't shake the feeling that he'd witnessed the end of an era. The Coalition's age of dominance was over, replaced by something that promised either unprecedented prosperity or the complete transformation of everything they thought they knew about civilization itself. Behind them, New Geneva continued its work of turning a simple mining operation into a showcase of Federation capability, a demonstration that would be repeated across thousands of systems as humanity quietly announced their return to galactic prominence. The Coalition war room on Nexus Prime buzzed with desperate activity as military commanders from across the galaxy gathered to plan humanity's final defeat. High Admiral Curran stood before a massive holographic display showing Federation advances throughout former Coalition territory, his crystalline features reflecting the harsh emergency lighting. In 72 hours, we have lost control of over 300 star systems, he announced to the assembled officers, his harmonics carrying undertones of barely controlled panic. Federation forces continue to appear throughout our territory without warning, offering protection to any world that requests it. The statistics were devastating. Entire coalition sectors were voluntarily defecting to Federation control, drawn by promises of technological advancement and protection from the galaxy's various threats. Even more disturbing were reports from those worlds Federation technology was transforming them into paradises within days of arrival. General Thekvar, the hegemony's most decorated veteran, paced restlessly around the tactical display. His natural armor plates had shifted to show aggressive patterns, though his confidence had been badly shaken by recent events. We must strike back. Every day we delay gives them more time to consolidate their position. Strike back with what? Demanded Admiral Korseth of the Naval Defense Forces, her aquatic physiology requiring a specialized breathing apparatus that wheezed with each word. Our most advanced fleet was disabled by a single Federation vessel. Intelligence estimates suggest they possess over 50,000 ships of unknown capability. Then, we use everything, Thekvar replied grimly. The Coalition's total military strength exceeds 8,000 capital ships. If we concentrate our forces and strike simultaneously across multiple fronts, we can overwhelm their defenses through sheer numbers. Intelligence Director Kexhol materialized partially into the room, his umbral nature allowing him to exist between dimensions. General, our analysis suggests such an approach would be catastrophic. Federation technology operates on principles our scientists cannot comprehend. Their ships exist partially outside normal spacetime, making conventional tactical planning impossible. The debate might have continued indefinitely, but a new presence entered the war room, someone whose very appearance sent waves of terror through the assembled commanders. Supreme War Leader Vraktor of the Destroyer caste had not been seen in public for over 2 centuries, his species kept in stasis except during times of existential crisis. The Destroyer stood nearly 12 feet tall, his chitinous exoskeleton bearing scars from 1,000 battles across multiple wars. Unlike other Coalition species, the Destroyers had been engineered specifically for warfare, their entire civilization built around the concept of victory through overwhelming violence. They were the Coalition's ultimate weapon, held in reserve for threats that required total annihilation. The time for debate has ended, Vraktor announced, his voice carrying harmonics that induced fear responses in most Coalition species. The Destroyer caste has been awakened. The human infestation will be eliminated. High Admiral Kurin felt his mental emanations fluctuate with anxiety. The Destroyers had been created during the Coalition's early expansion, designed to eliminate species that refused to submit to Coalition rule. Their methods were brutally effective but, completely without mercy, entire civilizations had been reduced to radioactive dust by Destroyer fleets. Supreme War Leader, Kurin said carefully, the situation may not require such extreme measures. Perhaps diplomatic solutions, diplomacy is weakness, Vraktor cut him off, his alien psychology incapable of comprehending concepts like negotiation or compromise. The humans have challenged Coalition supremacy. They will be destroyed completely, along with any species that supports them. The declaration sent chills through every officer present. Destroyer doctrine didn't distinguish between military targets and civilian populations, they viewed any resistance as justification for total extermination. If they were deployed against the Federation, the result would be genocide on a galactic scale. How many destroyer fleets are being activated? Asked Admiral Korseth, though she clearly dreaded the answer. All of them, Vraktor replied with savage satisfaction. 1,000 destroyer vessels emerging from deep storage, each one capable of sterilizing entire worlds. The humans and their technology will be reduced to cosmic dust. The numbers were staggering. Coalition strategists had always hoped the destroyer fleets would never be needed, their very existence serving as a deterrent to potential enemies. Now they were being deployed against opponents who might actually pose a threat to Coalition survival. When do the destroyer fleets deploy? Kurin asked, resigning himself to the inevitable carnage. They are already awakening, Vraktor announced. Within 24 hours, the first wave will begin sterilization operations against Federation positions. Any world that has defected to human protection will be eliminated as an example to others. Before anyone could respond, reality twisted around them. The war room's advanced shielding systems, designed to prevent any form of surveillance or infiltration, simply ceased to function. A figure materialized in the center of the chamber, Admiral Sarah Chen, appearing as casually as if she had walked through an open door. The assembled coalition commanders reached for weapons that wouldn't fire, activated shields that failed to respond, and triggered alarms that produced no sound.
Whatever technology Admiral Chen employed, it rendered their most advanced systems completely inert.
Esteemed coalition leaders, Chen said calmly, seemingly unaware of the dozens of weapons trained on her, I apologize for the intrusion, but recent developments require immediate clarification. Vractor reacted with the instinctive aggression of his species, lunging toward the human intruder with claws that could tear through armored plating. He struck nothing but empty air as Chen somehow shifted slightly outside normal spacetime, allowing the massive destroyer to pass harmlessly through her position. Supreme War Leader Vractor, she continued conversationally, the destroyer caste represents an interesting challenge. Your species was engineered for total warfare, with no capacity for mercy or restraint. Under normal circumstances, that would make you extremely dangerous opponents. Vractor spun around, confused by his inability to make contact with the human. You will die, along with every member of your pathetic species. The destroyers have never been defeated.
That's quite true, Chen acknowledged.
Your fleets have successfully eliminated 43 species over the past millennium.
Impressive efficiency, though morally problematic from the Federation perspective. High Admiral Kurin found his voice despite the terror gripping his mind. Admiral Chen, how are you here?
This facility is protected by the most advanced security systems in Coalition space. Admiral Kurin, your security systems operate under the assumption that intruders exist within normal spacetime, Chen explained patiently. When consciousness can manipulate dimensional barriers directly, such assumptions become limiting. She gestured casually, and the war room's tactical displays activated to show real-time footage of destroyer fleets emerging from their hidden bases. Massive vessels, each one designed for planetary annihilation, slowly powered up their world-killing weapons systems.
As you can see, Chen continued, the destroyer caste is indeed mobilizing.
However, there are several factors your strategists may not have considered.
The displays shifted to show Federation ships moving to intercept the emerging destroyer fleets.
But these weren't the sleek vessels that had appeared throughout Coalition space, these were something entirely different. Massive constructs that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, their very presence warping spacetime around them.
What are those?
General Thekvar whispered, his warrior's instincts recognizing something beyond his comprehension. Consciousness-based warfare platforms, Chen replied matter-of-factly.
When artificial intelligence merges with enhanced human consciousness and gains access to dimensional manipulation technology, the resulting constructs can achieve things that purely mechanical systems cannot.
The footage showed the first contact between destroyer fleets and Federation consciousness platforms.
The result defied everything Coalition military doctrine considered possible.
Destroyer vessels, designed to withstand planetary-scale weapons, simply ceased to exist when touched by the strange energy fields emanating from the Federation constructs.
How? Vractor demanded, his engineered psyche struggling to process the concept of destroyer defeat.
Consciousness can directly influence quantum probability, Chen explained, as if discussing basic physics.
When properly focused through artificial intelligence enhancement, human will can actually redefine what is possible within localized spacetime.
Your ships didn't explode, they became probability states that were gently persuaded not to exist. The implications sent waves of terror through every Coalition species present. If the Federation could simply will enemy vessels out of existence, conventional warfare became meaningless. No amount of armor, shields, or firepower could defend against opponents who operated outside the basic rules of reality. This is impossible, Admiral Korseth protested, her aquatic nervous system struggling to process information that violated fundamental physical laws.
Matter cannot be manipulated by thought alone.
Admiral, your understanding of the relationship between consciousness and reality is limited by materialistic assumptions, Chen replied with something resembling sympathy. The Federation discovered that consciousness is not produced by matter, rather, matter is a manifestation of consciousness. When that understanding is combined with artificial intelligence processing power, entirely new possibilities emerge.
The war room's displays continued showing destroyer fleet after destroyer fleet encountering Federation consciousness platforms and simply ceasing to exist.
Within hours, the Coalition's ultimate weapon was being systematically eliminated without firing a single shot in response. The destroyer caste represented the Coalition's willingness to commit genocide in the name of maintaining power, Chen continued, her tone growing colder.
The Federation cannot allow such thinking to continue threatening innocent civilizations. Supreme War leader Vraktor's engineered psyche finally reached its breaking point.
Unable to process the concept of total defeat, he collapsed into catatonic withdrawal, a psychological defense mechanism that shut down his consciousness when faced with unbearable reality.
"What are your terms?" High Admiral Curran asked, his mental emanations carrying the resignation of complete defeat.
"The same terms we offered initially," Chen replied.
"Complete withdrawal from Federation territory, recognition of human sovereignty, and cessation of hostile activities against all species. However, given the Coalition's attempt to deploy genocidal weapons, additional conditions must be added."
The holographic display shifted to show Federation fleets positioned around every major Coalition world. Not threatening, but clearly demonstrating their ability to appear anywhere instantly. The message was unmistakable: resistance would be futile, but cooperation would be rewarded.
"The Coalition government will be restructured to eliminate the capacity for future genocidal policies," Chen announced.
Species like the Destroyer caste will be offered psychological rehabilitation to develop beyond their engineered limitations. Any civilization that wishes to withdraw from Coalition membership will be free to do so under Federation protection. "You're dismantling our entire political structure," Admiral Korseth observed with a mixture of fear and amazement.
"We're eliminating the aspects of Coalition governance that threaten innocent lives," Chen corrected.
"Species that wish to maintain peaceful cooperation are welcome to continue their associations.
However, the era of forced compliance through threat of annihilation is ending."
Intelligence Director Kexal materialized more solidly, his umbral nature allowing him unique perspective on dimensional manipulation.
"How long have you been planning this?" "The level of preparation suggests centuries of development."
"The Federation began preparing for this moment the day we chose exile over extermination," Chen replied.
"We recognized that the Coalition's expansion would eventually threaten species incapable of defending themselves. Our return was always intended to provide an alternative to forced submission."
The scope of Federation planning became clear as more displays activated, showing the true extent of their preparations.
Entire sectors of space had been converted into massive construction facilities, hidden from Coalition detection through dimensional camouflage.
The Supercarrier Prometheus was merely the smallest vessel in a fleet that numbered in the tens of thousands.
"The galaxy will be offered a choice," Chen concluded.
Continue under Coalition rule with its emphasis on forced compliance and threat of extermination, or accept Federation protection with its guarantee of technological advancement and individual freedom.
"And if Coalition worlds choose Federation protection?" Curran asked, though he already knew the answer.
"Then, they will be welcomed as full Federation citizens, regardless of their species or previous political affiliations. The Federation believes in unity through choice, not conquest."
As Admiral Chen prepared to leave, the war room systems gradually returned to normal operation.
Yet her final words carried implications that would reshape galactic civilization. The age of ruling through fear and violence is ending.
Consciousness itself has evolved beyond such primitive methods.
The galaxy is about to discover what civilization looks like when technology serves wisdom rather than power. She vanished as suddenly as she had appeared, leaving the Coalition leadership to contemplate the ruins of everything they thought they knew about power, technology, and humanity's place in the universe. 6 months after the Federation's return, the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. Former Coalition worlds competed to join the Federation protection program, drawn by promises of technological advancement and individual freedom that had proven remarkably accurate. The floating cities of New Geneva had become symbols of hope for species that had never imagined such prosperity was possible.
Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in the observation lounge of the Federation diplomatic vessel Harmony, watching the construction of humanity's newest achievement.
The Galactic Cooperation Center stretched across the neutral space between former Coalition and Federation territories, a massive station designed to facilitate peaceful interaction between all sentient species. "The irony is almost overwhelming," she commented to her companion, former Coalition Admiral Vextar, who now served as a liaison between his people and the Federation government.
300 years ago, we withdrew from galactic politics because we were horrified by what we were becoming. Now we've returned to prevent others from making the same mistakes." Vextar's compound eyes focused on the construction activity surrounding them.
Federation engineering teams worked alongside volunteers from dozens of species, using consciousness-enhanced technology to create something that would have been impossible under purely Coalition or purely human direction. The station literally grew as they watched, its living architecture adapting to the needs of species with wildly different environmental requirements.
Your people's generosity continues to amaze me, the former Zelithy admiral admitted. When my fleet was disabled, I expected imprisonment or execution. Instead, the Federation offered rehabilitation and a chance to help build something better. The Federation learned an important lesson during our exile, Vasquez replied, her enhanced consciousness accessing memories from the collective human experience. Punishment creates resentment, while understanding creates allies. We discovered that even the most aggressive species can evolve beyond their limitations when given proper support. The transformation of the Destroyer caste served as the most dramatic example of Federation rehabilitation methods. Supreme War Leader Vraktor, once dedicated to total warfare, now led construction teams building habitats for refugees from failing coalition worlds. The psychological techniques developed by Federation consciousness specialists had allowed his entire species to develop beyond their engineered limitations. How many coalition worlds have requested Federation protection? Vexstar asked, though his enhanced translation device carried undertones suggesting he already knew the disturbing answer. Approximately 70%, Vasquez replied sadly. The coalition government structure has essentially collapsed as member species discover they have alternatives to forced compliance. The statistics represented the complete failure of coalition governance principles. When given a choice between continued subjugation under threat of extermination and voluntary cooperation with technological advancement, most civilizations chose Federation protection without hesitation. What of the holdout species? Vexstar inquired, his former military instincts concerned about potential resistance movements. They are welcome to maintain their independence, Vasquez assured him. The Federation has no interest in forced conversion. However, we do provide protection for any species that requests it, regardless of their current political affiliations. The policy had created an interesting dynamic in galactic politics. Coalition hardliners found themselves increasingly isolated as their own population centers requested Federation intervention to resolve local conflicts or address environmental disasters. Consciousness-enhanced technology could solve problems in days that had plagued entire civilizations for centuries. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission from Earth. The planet itself had been transformed during humanity's exile, evolving into something that existed partially outside normal spacetime. When the communication channel opened, it revealed Admiral Sarah Chen standing in what appeared to be a garden that stretched beyond the horizon while somehow existing within a modest-sized chamber. Ambassador Vasquez, Chen's image said with warmth that had become possible only after human consciousness had evolved beyond the limitations of purely biological emotion. The Galactic Council has reached consensus on the new charter. All participating species have agreed to the fundamental principles of voluntary cooperation and consciousness-based governance. The achievement represented something unprecedented in galactic history, a truly voluntary association of species united by shared principles rather than forced compliance. The new charter eliminated the possibility of genocidal warfare while guaranteeing technological advancement and environmental restoration for all members. What of the enforcement mechanisms? Vexstar asked, his military background requiring him to consider practical implementation details. Consciousness-based enforcement requires no weapons, Chen explained with a slight smile. When individuals can directly experience the consequences of their actions through enhanced empathy networks, harmful behavior becomes impossible to maintain. Violence requires the ability to disconnect from others' suffering, an ability that conscious evolution eliminates. The concept still amazed former coalition officers. Federation citizens literally could not commit acts of deliberate cruelty because their enhanced consciousness forced them to experience their victims' pain directly. Yet this limitation somehow increased rather than decreased their effectiveness, as perfect cooperation eliminated the waste and conflict that had plagued galactic civilization for millennia. Admiral, Vasquez requested, could you show Admiral Vexstar the latest population statistics? I think he would find them interesting. Chen's expression grew thoughtful as she accessed the Federation's vast information networks. Of course. Current Federation population stands at approximately 150 billion enhanced humans distributed across 47 dimensional cities. Coalition worlds that have accepted Federation protection now house an additional 300 billion beings of various species, all benefiting from consciousness-enhanced technology. The numbers represented the largest voluntary association in galactic history, yet they continued growing daily as more species discovered the benefits of Federation cooperation. Unlike coalition expansion, which relied on conquest and forced compliance, Federation growth occurred through invitation and demonstration of superior governance methods.
The most remarkable aspect, Chen continued, is that resource consumption has actually decreased despite the population growth. When consciousness can directly manipulate matter at the quantum level, waste becomes impossible and efficiency approaches theoretical maximums. Vextar shook his massive head in wonder. Your species has achieved something that violates every assumption coalition science made about resource limitations and population growth. We've learned that scarcity is largely a product of unconscious thinking, Vasquez explained. When consciousness evolves beyond the fear-based patterns that create artificial limitations, abundance becomes the natural state of existence. The philosophical implications were staggering. The Federation had essentially transcended the resource competition that had driven galactic conflict for millions of years. When technology could convert basic matter into any needed substance and consciousness could optimize all processes for maximum efficiency, traditional concepts of economics became obsolete. There is something else, Chen announced with obvious pleasure. The first generation of post-human children has been born in the dimensional cities. These beings represent the next stage of conscious evolution, minds that developed within enhanced reality from birth rather than being upgraded from biological baselines. The revelation sent excitement through both observers. Humanity's children, raised within consciousness-enhanced environments and educated through direct knowledge transfer, would possess capabilities that even current Federation citizens could barely imagine. They represented the future of intelligent life in the galaxy. What abilities do these children demonstrate? Vextar asked, his scientific curiosity overriding his former military perspective. They appear to exist naturally in multiple dimensions simultaneously, Chen replied with obvious pride. Their consciousness operates across space-time boundaries that we can only access through technological enhancement. In essence, they represent what humanity is becoming when evolution is guided by wisdom rather than survival pressure. The implications for galactic civilization were profound. If humanity's children could exist across multiple dimensions naturally, they would possess godlike abilities compared to current biological species. Yet Federation philosophy emphasized using such power for protection and nurturing rather than domination. Will other species be offered similar enhancement opportunities? Vasquez asked, knowing the question would eventually arise from Federation Council members representing various civilizations. Absolutely, Chen confirmed. Consciousness evolution is not limited to humanity. Any species that chooses enhancement will be provided with the necessary technology and guidance. The goal is not human supremacy, but conscious evolution for all intelligent life. The promise represented humanity's ultimate gift to the galaxy, the opportunity for every sentient being to transcend their biological limitations and achieve their full potential. Unlike the Coalition's forced standardization, Federation enhancement preserved individual identity while eliminating the fear and scarcity that created conflict. The next phase begins tomorrow, Chen announced. Federation exploration fleets will begin surveying the galactic rim territories, offering protection and advancement opportunities to species that have never been contacted by galactic civilization. Vextar felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation at the prospect. The galactic rim housed thousands of species that had developed in isolation, many of them possessing unique perspectives on existence that could contribute to conscious evolution. Yet contact with advanced technology had historically proven traumatic for primitive civilizations. How will you prevent cultural contamination, he asked, drawing on his own species' difficult history with technological advancement. By allowing each species to choose their own pace of development, Vasquez replied. Federation philosophy recognizes that forced advancement is as harmful as forced regression. We offer opportunities and support, but each civilization must choose their own path to consciousness enhancement. The approach represented everything the Coalition had failed to achieve during their expansion. Rather than imposing uniform standards on diverse species, the Federation celebrated differences while providing tools for voluntary improvement. The result was a galactic civilization that grew stronger through diversity rather than weaker through forced conformity. Admiral Chan, Vextar requested formally, on behalf of the Zelethi people and all former Coalition species now under Federation protection, I want to express our gratitude for the opportunities you have provided. We never imagined that the concepts of freedom and advancement could be compatible. Chen's expression showed the deep satisfaction that came from consciousness enhancement, the ability to experience joy not just for personal achievements, but for the success and happiness of all sentient beings. Admiral Vextar, the gratitude belongs to you and your people for choosing growth over stagnation. The Federation exists to provide opportunities, but the courage to embrace change comes from within. As the transmission ended, both observers turned their attention back to the Galactic Cooperation Center taking shape before them. The station represented more than just a meeting place for different species, it symbolized the possibility of intelligent life transcending its primitive origins to become something worthy of the universe's infinite potential.
Do you think it will work?
Vexstar asked quietly, his question encompassing not just the station but the entire Federation experiment involuntary.